Mosina. Chapter 1. You are a non, and you're currently running for your life. You run through the jungle, darting around trees, hurdling undergrowth. Beads of sweat run down your face as arrows fly by. You hold tightly to a sack of priceless artifacts, treasures that you've come to save and bring back to the princesses. Behind you is a swarm of angry natives, and they want their treasures back. But you are a non. You're the greatest explorer this world has ever seen. You skillfully weave through the brush and foliage, and the angry calls begin to fade in the distance behind you. You think you're in the clear when suddenly you are forced to skid to a halt. Before your eyes lays a great cliff, a vertical plunge into a raging river. The voices are getting closer, and you can hear the twang of bowstrings. There was no turning back, and you had to keep moving or risk ending up on a shish kebab. You take a deep breath and leap off of the ledge. As you speed toward the water below, you see something that makes your heart sink. Rocks, just below the surface. Suddenly panicked, you begin to flap your arms, as if that would slow you down. In your struggle, you barely catch the movement in your peripheral vision. As you turn to meet the source of the disturbance, you are met with a shadowy figure speeding toward you. You feel something grab the back of your jacket and slow your descent. Still in mild shock, you turn to get a better look at your saving grace. Batwings. Suddenly, you feel yourself falling again. You and your would-be savior are still heading for a hard landing. Just before you hit the water, you raise your hands up to shield your face. A short yelp escapes your mouth as you shoot up in your bed, covered in sweat. It was just a dream. You look at the clock.
Shit, I'm gonna be late.
You groan as you jump out of bed and start your day. You were supposed to be at the docks 15 minutes ago. As you rush through the town market, you almost knock over several shoppers. Typical morning rush in Ponyville. You're practically at a full sprint now, almost stumbling several times.
Hey, Anon, your shoe is untied.
You hear off in the crowd. You look over and spot 3 fillies waving at you.
Not this train.
You think to yourself. Glancing down, you see they were right. Suddenly, you crash into someone. Tumbling to the ground together, you roll and flail in a tangled mess. Finally skidding to a halt, you cough as the dust cloud disperses.
Oh god, I'm sorry about that. I wasn't watching where I was.
Your speech is cut short as you try to process just what you were seeing. Before you was a pony. At least you thought it was a pony. But it was wrong. Her wings were not like the other Pegasi. They were leathery looking, like a bat's wings. Behind her glasses, her pupils were slits, like something that was meant to live in the dark. And those fangs. You could have sworn these things were all vegetarians. She was frantic as she was crawling around trying to gather up her belongings. You watch her in silence as she stuffs papers back into her saddlebag.
No, I'm sorry.
She said, talking a million words per minute.
This is my first time in Ponyville, and I don't really know where I'm supposed to be going, and I was looking at my map and...
She trailed off as she finally looked at you. From the looks of things, she was just as confused by you as you were by her.
I...
She stammers, her eyes wide. You don't have time for this. You look around and see another bit of her belongings. You pick up the rolled parchment and look at it. It was a map, covered in all manner of scribbles, X's, and little cliff notes. Either she had been all over the world, or she was planning quite the trip. Handing her the map, she seemed to snap out of her trance.
Mosina.
She blurts out rather loudly as she dusts herself off and fixes her ponytail.
Anon.
You say, dusting off your pants. You look over your shoulder and see the masts of the ships at the docks at the end of the market.
I'm late for work. It was nice to meet you.
You say as you start to walk away.
Wait, can I ask you for a couple of questions?
Mosina calls after you, fumbling with a piece of paper and a quill.
Sorry, gotta go.
You say, rushing back into the crowd. As you make your way towards the docks, you turn back and see Mosina the bat pony still staring dumbfounded off in your direction, holding a quill and a paper in her mouth.
Anon, you're fired.
Your shift manager says, as he sees you walk into the office.
What? This is the third time this week. We need dog hands who will be here on time every morning.
Your eye twitched.
Fine. Here's your last week's pay. Now get out of here.
He ordered as he threw a small bag of bits at you. As you leave the office, you look down at your bag of bits. This wasn't going to last you hardly 2 weeks. Definitely not before you could find another job. Curse your fucked up sleep schedule. You walk back to the market, wondering just what the hell your next move was. Maybe you could get a job on that farm on the outskirts of town. Nah, if you had to hear about apples all day, every day, you'd probably be better off by yourself. Maybe you could try your hand at baking over at Sugar Cube Corner. Who are you kidding? You'd end up burning the place down. Lost in your thoughts, you didn't even notice the bat pony floating above you, scribbling away on her parchment, taking notes. When you finally feel the presence, you looked up and catch her eye. She jumps as she realizes she's been caught, and her glasses fall to the ground.
Hi again, Anon.
She stammers as she drops to the ground and feels around for her glasses.
Hey, could you help me find my glasses? I'm blind as a bat without them.
You crack a small smile, in spite of the circumstances.
Hello again.
You pause, realizing you'd forgotten her name.
Mosina.
She finished, still feeling around in the dust. She really couldn't see a thing.
I got it.
You say, reaching for the glasses. Before you can reach them, a small pink hoof snatches them up.
Well, look at the silver spoon. The pretty monkey found some pony almost as pretty as him to hang out with.
You roll your eyes. The kids in this town, seriously.
Very funny, kid. Give me the glasses. Oh, look how the monkey is mad at you.
The pink filly's friend snickered.
Yeah, don't wanna get the freaks upset. They might try to infect me with their freak germs or something.
This shit wasn't even clever. You've had enough.
Diamond Tiara, you give that pony back her glasses right now.
An adult voice finally spoke up.
Oh, fine.
The filly groaned, flinging the glasses at you as they walked away with their friend.
What did I tell you about being nicer to others?
The filly's father said as he led them away. Bad parenting transcends dimensions, it seems. Turning back to Mosina, you kneel down in front of her and hand her the glasses.
Here you go. Sorry about that.
You say.
Thanks, Anon.
She muttered, adjusting them to her face. She was pretty quiet, and she wasn't looking at you anymore. Those filly's comments must have gotten to her.
Hey, don't worry about those two. They are just a couple spoiled little shits.
You say, helping Mosina stand up.
No, I'm used to it. Not many ponies are used to seeing my kind.
She mumbled. But she smiled as she looked at you.
Thank you again, Anon. I'm sorry for thinking up to you. I just needed to examine you a bit.
She said, a small blush crossing her cheeks.
Examine me?
You said, raising an eyebrow.
I have never seen anything like you. I had to get a closer look.
She said, before looking away again.
I guess I should have just asked, but I thought you were too busy. Not anymore. I have got all the time in the world now.
You chuckle, coming to the realization that you now had the whole day to yourself. Her eyes light up at that.
Well, if you are free, would you mind answering some questions for me? It's not every day you meet a whole new species, and I really would appreciate if you...
She really could just go on and on. In a way, you found her kind of endearing. How focused she was on her work.
Anon, you there?
She said, a look of concern on her face.
Yeah, sure. Let's go find a place to sit down. No sense letting you do your interrogation in the middle of the street.
You shrug.
Interrogation? Anon, I'm not trying to interrogate you.
She cries, looking somewhat worried.
I was just... Never mind. Come on. I know, just the place.
You chuckle as you see she had no sarcasm detector. After a lengthy discussion at the local diner, you learn a lot about your new friend. Her race were normally nocturnal, explaining her bat-like appearance, and came from a place called Hollow Shades, tucked away in the north. She was a cartographer and a researcher, and Ponyville was her first stop on her trip around Equestria. She had many questions for you as well. You told her all about humanity, Earth, and about your old home before you found yourself here. She was fascinated by all things foreign, and you were about as foreign as it got around these parts. For hours you talked, and soon the sun was starting to fall below the horizon.
Well, it's getting kind of late.
You say,
I think it's time to be heading home. Oh shoot, what time is it?
Mosina cried out, just noticing the looming darkness.
About 7:30. Why?
You asked, surprised at her reaction.
Oh no, I missed my train. I was supposed to be in Canterville tomorrow morning, but the last train left 20 minutes ago.
She cried, suddenly looking very distraught.
Don't you just take the next train in the morning?
You ask, not seeing the problem.
Yes, but I didn't bring enough beads to rent a room for the night. My uncle is in Canterville and he's supposed to give me rest of the money I need for my trip.
You stop and think. You couldn't just let her wander the streets all night. Even if she was nocturnal, this was a new town to her.
You can stay at my house for the night if you like.
You say, trying to be courteous. Her eyes light up once again.
Really? You do that? Thank you, thank you, thank you!
Mosina squeals with glee as she flies across the table and hugs you. You flinch at the unexpected contact, but soon you relax as she gives you a final big squeeze. Suddenly, she seems to realize what she's doing and backs up a bit, blushing a bit again.
Sorry.
She says, rubbing the back of her neck bashfully. You shake your head as you stand up from your seat.
Don't mention it. Come on, my house is just a block away.
You laugh, the gears in your mind spinning, planning for tomorrow. The sound of a rooster's crow breaks the silence as the sun rises over Ponyville. You warily open your eye, your face half buried in your pillow. You sit up groggily, stretching in the early morning light. Today was the day you escape this town and make something of yourself. And you knew that pony friend Mosina was going to help you do it. As you throw on your clothes and gather what belongings you saw fit, you think about how you're going to present your idea to her. Maybe you should just ask her if you can come along. But what if she says no? No, she couldn't say no. You were jobless. And in this economy, it's not like there were jobs everywhere exactly. You could be her assistant. Yeah, every good researcher has an assistant. This could work. As you continue thinking about how to best approach the topic, a smell begins to drift to your nose. Pancakes? You walk out into the hall and hear the sizzle of the griddle, and the smell intensifying. Poking your head into the kitchen, your mouth drops at the sight. On the table was a large smorgasbord of food. A masterfully crafted fruit salad containing every piece from your fridge at the center, flanked by plates covered in pancakes, toast, and all manner of things. Mosina flutters in the air, humming a tune to herself as she flips another pancake off the griddle. As she turns, she catches your stare and smiles.
Good morning, Anon.
She says cheerily.
Good morning, Mosina.
You say.
Did you make all this?
She scratches the back of her neck and makes a small smile.
Yeah, I'm sorry I emptied your fridge. I wanted to surprise you with breakfast to thank you for letting me stay here last night.
She responds. Under normal circumstances, you'd be upset about someone raiding your fridge, but looking at your guest, you couldn't help but smile.
Well, thank you. You didn't tell me you could cook.
You say as you sit down and begin piling food on your plate. She blushes again. So easily embarrassed, this one,
It's nothing, just pancakes and salad.
she said, laughing nervously. Humble, too. You dig into your breakfast and ponder whether now would be the right time to ask her to join her on her trip.
So, Mosina, where do you need to catch your train?
You ask before your mind is blown yet again. She has a massive pile of food on her plate, making yours look like child's play, and she's already carving through it like a knife through butter.
Roundworm.
She responds with a mouthful of pancake.
What was that?
You ask. Swallowing her food, she chuckles nervously again.
Sorry, sometimes I forgot my manners. My train leaves at around 7 o'clock.
She says.
So there's still a hour or so before I have to go. I really want to thank you again for letting me stay here.
Now's the time.
It was nothing. Can't leave a friend out on the street.
You say, bringing a big smile to your guest's face.
So, are you meeting anyone else in Canterbury to go on this trip with you? Are you going it by yourself?
Her smile fades a bit and she breaks her eye contact with you.
No, nobody else. It's just me.
She says.
My uncle said he would pay for a friend to come with me, but nobody back home is really interested in seeing the rest of the world, given the less than friendly attitudes.
Jackpot.
Well, wouldn't you want someone to come with you?
You probe.
Well, of course.
She replies.
The hitchhiking guide or Equestria says that one should never travel on, but who would go with me? Well, I always wanted to get out of this town and see the rest of this place. Maybe I could go with you? You know, as your research assistant or something.
You say.
Really? You'd want to come with me? But what about your job? Aren't you too busy for all this?
Mosina asked, sounding a bit hesitant.
I sort of got fired from the dock force yesterday. There's nothing really keeping me here now.
You say, producing your small bag of bits.
This is all I have got left to my name. I can't afford to stay here, so yeah, this seems like a pretty good alternative to homelessness.
Mosina's eyes are wide at the revelation.
I'm sorry about your job, Anon, but if that's true, then yes, you can join me. No friend of mine is going to end up on the street.
She says, a smile returning to her face.
Ching.
You think to yourself.
Great, I have already got my thing packed. I can carry your stuff too, if you like.
You say, standing up and clearing your places.
Oh, Anon, you don't have to do that.
She says.
What sort of assistant would I be if I didn't?
You smirk as you walk off to grab your bag. Nailed it! You stare out the window of the train as the field and mountains in the distance fly by. It was good to see something other than the dirt roads of Ponyville. In the north, you can see the spires of Canterlot peeking over the mountainside. The two of you had been on the train for about an hour, and the restlessness was starting to get to you. You look over to see Mosina, who is scribbling away at a piece of parchment. Did she ever stop? You stare at her scribbling, scratching your head and wondering what she could be possibly taking notes about on a train. She looks up and catches your stare.
You alright there, Anon?
She asked, raising an eyebrow.
Oh yeah, I'm fine. Just wondering what you're writing there. Something about the experience of the Equestrian railway system?
You joke.
Why would I write about that? Everyone's seen a train before, Anon.
She answers, missing your sarcasm again.
I'm just making some notes about the landscape. I have never been this far west before. It's different than whole shades. Notes for who, exactly?
You ask.
For my book.
She exclaims excitedly.
When this is all over, I'm going to compile my research into a book, and it will be printed all over Equestria. Every pony will know about the whole of the land, and it will be all thanks for me.
Well, she was ambitious. You had to give her that. Suddenly, she stops and looks at you.
Well, me and my faithful assistant, Anon, that is.
She corrects herself, winking at you. You can't help but smirk. Who would have thought that you would have been part of the grand plan to spread knowledge to the masses?
So, my name is going on the cover too? Right under mine. And half of the profits as well?
She snorts, trying to suppress her laughter.
You're silly or not. This book isn't to make a profit. You can't put a price on education.
You're suddenly mildly less excited about the prospect now.
No, sir.
She continues.
Anything the book makes is going right back into the education system, so schools all over Equestria will have better facilities for the next generation to learn about the world.
You were slightly surprised at how devoted she was to education. Now it was your turn to be humbled.
That's very noble of you.
You say.
Hopefully, they will return the favor by paying your bills.
You laugh. She rolls her eyes at you.
Well, if all goes well, I hope to receive a royal grant for my work. That should help me continue my research and cover my living expenses. Do the princesses do that often?
You ask, wondering just how much of a long shot this plan was.
Only for the best, but between you and I.
She whispered, getting close to your ear.
I think we are shoo-in.
She said, giggling. The conductor shouts back from the front.
Next stop, Canterlot Central Station. Oh, that's us, Anon.
Mosina said excitedly.
This is so exciting. I can't wait to see the big city. Yeah, me either.
You say, staring out the window at the looming towers that were suddenly upon you. The two of you step off the train into the crowded terminal. All around are ponies, griffins, zebras, you name it. For the capital of Equestria, Canterlot sure was a melting pot. You look over to Mosina and see her eyes wide and a toothy grin on her face. This cosmopolitan atmosphere was probably sending her into a euphoric high. You shake her shoulder a bit and she snaps out of her daze.
You wanna see the rest of the city, or are you content to stand in the train terminal all day?
You ask, chuckling.
Sorry, Anon. It just look at all these different ponies and the zebras and griffins. I have never seen up close before.
She stumbled through her words, barely containing her excitement. You shook your head, remembering your first encounter with her.
Just try not to interrogate everyone we see, alright?
You say, picking up your bags and moving toward the exit.
I do not interrogate anyone, Anon. I interview them.
You shake your head and smile as the two of you step out into the cobbled streets. The view was magnificent. Tall ivory towers were all around you, built of pearly white stone and almost sparkling in the sunlight. In the streets, the elite of equestrian society were going about their business, shopping in the finest of boutique stores, riding in carriages drawn by their less affluent fellow citizens, living a life of luxury. Meanwhile, Ponyville had streets, dirt, and farms.
Just like home sweet home.
You grumble to yourself.
What was that, Anon?
Mosina asks, looking up at you. You shake your head.
Nothing, just thinking about Earth.
You say, adjusting to the environment.
You need to tell me more about that place sometime. I think I'll make for a really interesting side project.
Mosina said enthusiastically. She really had no off switch.
Sure, if you want all of the cases to think you are nuts. So, where's your uncle?
You ask. Mosina pulls out her map of the city and begins studying it intensely, almost burying her nose in it.
He lives over on Una Avenue, which according to my map is about 4 blocks away.
She says, rolling up her map and putting it in her bag.
We should probably get a move on them.
You suggest, getting uncomfortable as ponies start brushing past you to get in and out of the terminal.
Alright, would you mind taking some notes for me along the way? It will be so much easier now having an assistant. I can keep my eye on everything.
Great, now you're a living recorder. As the two of you make your way through the city, Mosina prattles on about this and that, commenting on every which thing going on around you. You struggle to keep up taking note of what she says, with her habit of speaking so quickly. Eventually, you find yourselves on Lunar Avenue, a relatively quaint street compared to the rest of the city. There were no high towers here, but the apartment complexes were still large and fairly luxurious, especially compared to what you were used to in Ponyville. Mosina was buried in her map again.
Ah, we are here. The Chateau de Canterlot.
She says, stopping abruptly at and in front of a particularly large, spiffy-looking building.
He's up in the penthouse. Let's go, Anon.
She said, rushing inside. The two of you stand in the elevator as it heads higher and higher, powered by unicorns employed by the establishment.
So, Mosina, what does your uncle do to afford this?
You ask, realizing the topic had never come up.
Oh, he did a lot of work for the Princess Celestia years ago. He was a diplomat and got to travel all around Equestria and even further.
She said, her excitement building.
He used to tell me stories about the other lands and the places he'd gone, everything he'd seen. He is the reason I'm so fascinated by the world. Makes sense.
You shrug. A rich old government worker. This should be interesting. The elevator stops and the door opens. In front of you, flanking the sides of a grandiose doorway, are two royal guards. As you approach, their wings shoot out to block your entry.
State your business.
One of them says.
My name is Mosina and this is my friend Anon. I'm here to see my uncle Silverton.
Mosina says calmly.
Ah, yes, the master has been expecting you. Go right ahead.
The guard says as they retract their wings and you enter. Mosina curtsies and opens the door to head inside. Once the door is closed, you turn to her.
Royal guards? Someone's important.
You say, nudging her.
I did say my uncle worked for the princesses, didn't I?
She replies. The two of you walk further into the penthouse. It was a breathtaking scene. The most lavish of furniture and belongings were all around you. Beautiful paintings, ancient pottery, and all manner of things. The large windows gave a view of almost the entirety of the city, and a roaring fire burned in the fireplace.
Uncle, it's Mosina. I'm here.
She called out, almost immediately responded to by hoofbeats. A mature stallion came bounding out from the other room and toward the two of you, his long flowing silver mane trailing behind him.
Mosina, my dearest niece.
He cried in a funny accent as he wrapped his forelegs around Mosina in a bear hug.
It has been far for too long since I have seen you. My, how you have grown.
He said, giving her a final squeeze before taking a step back to look at her.
Yes, yes.
Mosina said.
Mama and Papa sent their love, by the way. Bah, of course my little brother couldn't be bothered to come tell me that himself, eh? Lazy sod.
The stallion laughed before his eyes turned to you.
And who is your friend? This is Anon. I met him in Ponyville yesterday. He's from Earth.
Mosina said excitedly. Silver Tongue eyed you intensely.
Earth, huh? I have never heard of it. It's really far away.
You respond, shrugging.
I have told Mosina all about it. Well, it seems you two will have stories for me for a change, Mosina?
The old stallion laughed, adjusting his regal attire.
And Anon is going to be joining you on this trip of yours.
He asked Mosina.
Yes, he is my research assistant.
She responded cheerfully.
He's already been practicing taking my nose all the way here.
Silver Tongue's eyes had not left you in minutes. His eyes certainly did not match his tone. They had a very subtle hint of distrust. You could barely pick it up. Diplomats could be very deceiving.
Well, that's grand. I'm sure he will make a fine assistant for a lovely young lady like yourself.
He said, finally turning back to Mosina.
You will stay the night here. I have your tickets for the 3 o'clock train to Stalingrad for tomorrow. I'd like to have a good day and a half to catch up with my favorite niece before she goes off to see the world. I will treat you to lunch in the Castle Gardens.
He laughed.
Thank you again for this, Uncle Sivetan.
Mosina said, hugging him tightly.
Can Anon come with us?
She asked. Silver Tongue raised an eyebrow.
I don't know, Mosina. He isn't family. I don't know if... Please...
Mosina begged, putting on her best puppy dog eyes. Sure enough, Silver Tongue's demeanor shifted again, and he sighed in defeat.
Yes, my dear, of course he can come. Yay!
Mosina squealed, hugging him again.
Thank you, thank you, thank you!
She said in her million-word-a-minute manner.
Anything for you, Mosina. Now come, I will show you to your rooms. Your separate rooms.
He said, giving you another glaring look with his piercing blue eyes. Well, this guy was certainly turning out to be a great big ball of sunshine. It was a long, restless night. Mosina and her uncle had been up for hours and hours, talking about every which thing. Being bat ponies, it didn't seem to cross their minds that some people might be trying to sleep. Still, at some point in the night, you'd managed to drown out their banter long enough to pass out for a few hours. Your doors fly open, rousing you from your sleep.
Good morning.
Mosina sang as she pranced into the room. You groaned, burying your face in your pillow.
Oh, come on, Anon. We have got a big day ahead of us.
She said, yanking the blanket from your grasp, exposing you to the morning chill.
Mosina, please, 5 more minutes.
You managed to grumble. She gives you a disapproving look.
We are leaving in 20 minutes. We are meeting my uncle at the castle at noon.
She said as she trotted back out of the room. Groaning, you forced yourself up into a sitting position.
And wear something nice.
She called from the other room.
Don't want to look swoopy in front of princesses.
Your grogginess immediately subsided at that.
The princesses?
You ask.
Yes, they will be joining us for lunch. My uncle bought some things to give me a chance to pitch them out a research idea. Isn't that exciting?
She said gleefully. You began to wonder if maybe you were biting off more than you could chew with this one. 2 days ago, you were a lonely dockhand. Now you were off to meet royalty.
Yeah, that's actually really great.
You said, genuinely feeling excited for the prospect. You throw on the fanciest clothes you had managed to pack. Admittedly, they were little more than nice-looking casual wear, but you had not been expecting something quite like this. In 10 minutes, you were freshly shaved, groomed, and ready to go and mingle with high society. Eventually, the minutes began to drag on, long surpassing the 20-minute deadline she'd set for you. For having rushed you out of bed, Mosina sure was taking her time. You looked at the clock. It was 1:45.
Mosina, come on, we gotta go.
You call out as you wait by the front door.
Just a minute.
You hear her call from the other room. Moments later, she rounded the corner. Your eyes went wide as you saw her. Her normal glasses were replaced with the finest spectacles you'd ever laid eyes on. Instead of her usual ponytail, her mane was loose and wavy. Instead of her usual pack, she wore a rather stately-looking dress. You were suddenly feeling a lot less confident in your own appearance. She notices your stare and does a quick turn for you.
What do you think? Good enough for royalty?
She asked, laughing.
You could be royalty with that get-up.
You said, stifling a smile as you fought off your disbelief that this was the same mare from before.
Oh, shush.
Mosina said, waving a dismissive hoof at you. She eyed you up and down as well.
You look nice. Is that human formal wear?
She asked curiously. Looking down at yourself, you can't help but laugh. Maybe you'd be fine after all, not like these ponies know what earthly formal wear ought to look like.
Yeah, you like what you see?
You asked sarcastically, giving her a turn like she'd given you. She giggled and shook her head.
Absolutely.
She said, rolling her eyes.
Now, come on, we are going to be late.
She said, trotting past you to the elevator.
Well, whose fault was that?
You asked, nudging her with your elbow. As the two of you climb the steps to the castle entrance, notice Mosina is really taking in all of the sights. She's talking to herself lowly, as if dictating her thoughts to an invisible recorder.
Something up?
You ask.
I'm just trying to remember everything I've seen here.
She answered.
It's not often I'm without my notes, but this trip will be a very important part of my book. Yeah, suppose meeting the leaders of the country probably would be something you could squeeze a sentence in for.
You chuckle.
Oh, haha.
She replied, sticking her tongue out at you.
Please, try to take this seriously. We may only have one shot at this.
As you approach the great doorway to enter the castle, you can see Silvertongue already waiting for you.
Mosina, so glad you could make it. I was beginning to worry that maybe you gotten lost.
He said.
My, you look stunning. Thank you, Uncle. Are we going straight to the gardens?
Mosina asked, looking around again.
Or do I have some time to look around the castle a bit? The princesses are on tight schedule. There will be time to see the rest of the castle later. For now, we eat.
Silvertongue said as he motioned for one of the door guards to allow you passage. As the three of you make your way through the castle toward the gardens, Silvertongue prattles on about this and that, mostly etiquette for lunch with the royals.
Are you getting all of this? Anon, was it?
He asked. He'd been making extra sure that you were picking up on every last detail he could shoehorn in on his long-winded explanations.
Crystal, sir.
You say, getting slightly irritated.
Good. It's a rare opportunity that someone in your position is allowed to interact with the royal sisters this way. You should feel honored.
He responded, matter-of-factly. He turned to you and gave you the same glaring look that he had back at the penthouse.
So, there's the Earth-seeking formal attire?
Not this again. You look down at your collared shirt and khakis.
Earthling, actually. And yes, this is standard formal clothing where I come from.
You respond. He scoffs lightly.
Yes, well, I have forgotten how different some cultures can be.
He said, no longer looking at you.
Just be on your best behavior.
He was really starting to get on your nerves. Mosina was just looking straight ahead, but you could see the discomfort beginning to spread across her face.
Ah, here we are.
Silvertongue announced as you stepped through the grand opening that led out into the castle gardens. Your irritation with Silvertongue melted away as the party made its way through the gardens. The aroma of the thousands of different types of flowers was heavenly, and the sea of colors and great jewel-encrusted fountains painted a picture of the most serene beauty you had ever thought possible. It's like you had died and gone to heaven. Rounding a corner, you see a round table attended to by servants and guards. Sitting in their respective places were the princesses of Equestria. To your surprise, they stood up to meet your party rather than remaining seated. You'd been told of the royal sisters, but this was your first time seeing them. They were truly a sight to see, different than any pony you'd ever encountered. According to those you'd spoken to, these two were responsible for raising the sun and the moon every day and night. You thought it had more to do with planetary rotation and whatnot, but who were you to tell magic-talking ponies what was possible and what wasn't? Silvertongue and Mosina bowed deeply as they approached. Noticing this, you immediately and clumsily followed suit.
Sir Silverton, how nice of you to join us today.
The White Princess said.
Princess Celestia, Princess Luna, it's always an honor to meet with you.
Silvertongue said, rising from his bow.
Your Majesties, I'd like you to meet my niece, Mosina. She's the one I was telling you about when we last spoke.
The princesses looked at Mosina, who had not yet risen from her bow.
It's a pleasure to meet you, Mosina. Your uncle had told us much about you.
Celestia said.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
Mosina stammered, still not rising from her bow. The sisters looked at each other, smirking a bit.
You may rise, Mosina.
Luna said, motioning for her to stand.
Yes, but princess.
Mosina said, rising from her bow. The gaze of the royals then turned to you.
And who is your friend?
Celestia questioned, examining you thoroughly. There was no hint of negativity in her tone, or her expression, just pure curiosity.
That's Anon, Mosina's friend. He will be accompanying her on her trip.
Silvertongue said.
That's all?
Celestia said, still eyeing you.
Where are you from, Anon?
Oh God, oh God, oh God, oh God. You open your mouth, but words don't seem to escape. You've never spoken to the leader of a country before. You clear your throat and try again.
Earth, ma'am.
You manage to get out. Silvertongue shoots you another glare.
You will address the princess as Your Majesty anon.
He said sternly, "Will this guy just get off your back?"
I'm sorry, in my country we didn't have royalty.
You say. Celestia chuckles slightly, and Luna seems to be amused as well.
It's quite alright, anon. We are not such sticklers for formalities.
Celestia says, motioning for your party to take your seats. As you all sit, Celestia turns to several servants.
I think we are about ready to begin. Would you bring out everything?
She asks. As the servants take their leave, the princesses turn back to the three of you.
So, Mosina, tell us more about your trip.
Celestia says in a warm, inviting voice.
Well,
Mosina starts, struggling to put words together.
Well, tomorrow we are going to Stalingrad to do some more research about the history of ponies of the north.
She says. Celestia simply nods, a smile on her face.
There's certainly a new group. The city is ancient, you know, almost predating Canterlot.
She explains.
The ponies there and all over the north can be independent-minded and not very welcoming to outsiders. You will have to exercise caution and try not to offend them while you're there.
Mosina at this point is wide-eyed and nodding frantically.
Yes, Your Majesty. In what research I have managed to do learned that they aren't exactly the most friendly. But I hope that maybe if you will open up and allow me to interview them,
She says meekly.
I'm sure you'll find whatever you're looking for.
Celestia says reassuringly. At this point, Luna speaks up.
Where else will you be going on this expedition, young Mosina?
Mosina stops and thinks.
After Stalingrad, Anon and I will probably be heading out to the western frontier, to Appaloosa, then to the southern forests in Stableside. You certainly have quite the trip ahead of you.
Luna said.
It will be worth it for my book.
Mosina said, finally loosening up.
I want every pony who reads it to live knowing something they never did before.
At that, Luna gave an approving look.
That's a very noble goal, Mosina.
She said.
That's what I told her.
You piped up. The princesses looked to turn to you.
Did you? Well, you'd certainly be correct in your assessment.
Luna replied.
So, Anon, do tell us more about yourselves. I do not recall ever meeting one of your kind before.
Tell us about yourself. This fucking question.
Well, I'm a human, from Earth, like I said before.
You start, struggling to think of what else you could really say of interest. The table simply looks at you as you pause.
I worked as a dockhand Ponyville. I have been here in Ecclesia for about 3 months now. And how did you find yourself here, exactly?
Luna probed.
I honestly don't remember. One day I woke up and bam, here I was.
You shrug.
I see.
Luna said, looking to her sister.
Well, we are glad to have you with us.
Celestia said, nodding at you.
It's not every day you get to meet someone as unique as yourself.
You? Unique? You can't help but laugh at the notion, eliciting strange looks from the others. Calming yourself, you notice the stares.
I'm sorry.
You say, wiping a tear from your eye.
Nobody has ever used that word to describe me before. Well, now someone has.
Celestia smiled at you, understanding. Over the course of your lunch, Silvertongue and the royal sisters discussed current affairs, politics, other nonsense you weren't too concerned about. Mosina was very quiet and barely touching her food. She caught your stare several times and simply gave you a quick smile before looking down back at her plate. When all was said and done, the group made its way back into the castle, when the princesses stopped looking near the library.
Mosina, if you wouldn't mind, we'd like very much to speak to you more about your trip in private for a few moments.
Celestia said, beckoning her toward the library. Mosina stood there dumbfounded for a moment.
Yes, of course.
She exclaimed, trotting in behind them as they closed the door.
Anon, I would also like a word with you.
Silvertongue said sternly. Great. What could it be this time?
Yes, sir.
You say, looking him in the eye as you spoke.
I'm going to be blunt with you, Anon. I don't much care for you.
He started. Some diplomat.
I thought you diplomats were supposed to be tactful.
He quipped, leaning up against a pillar.
In cases of national importance, yes, but this is a man-to-man discussion.
He dismissed.
I don't know you. I don't know if anything you have told us about yourself is true, but my niece trusts you.
Oh boy, this talk.
Mosina is very dear to me, and I'm barely more on board with her doing this trip of hers with someone like you than I am with her going it alone.
He snarled.
Mosina is my friend. You have no reason not to trust me.
You reply. Silvertongue simply shakes his head.
Trust is earned, not freely thrown about.
He shot back.
Regardless, if you are to go with her, I expect her to return in good health and spirits. If she is anything less than that, I will hold you accountable. Are we clear?
Yeah, this was definitely getting a little bit out of hand.
Yes, sir.
You say, not breaking your eye contact with him.
Good.
He replies, as the library doors open and Mosina comes pounding out, a big smile on her face.
Good news?
You ask.
I'll tell you on the train, but we have got to get back to the Finn house to get ready.
She said cheerily, trotting past you.
Come on, I will race you back.
She said with a devilish grin as she took off. You turn back to the princesses and Silvertongue and bow slightly.
Thank you again for everything, but I have to go catch my colleague.
You say, and off you go after her.
Strange pairing, those two.
Luna says as she looks at her sister.
I will say.
Silvertongue grumbled. Celestia shook her head and smiled at the two.
Maybe, but something tells me that those two are right where they ought to be. They're giving you how much?
You ask, your jaw almost on the floor. Mosina laughs as she changes out of her regal outfit.
Enough to last a very, very long time, Anon. Enough for 2 lifetimes of research, I would venture.
She said, trying her mane back into its usual ponytail.
There's got to be some sort of catch here.
You say, mildly skeptical. Mosina just smiles and catches her head.
No catch, Anon. All we have to do is make a couple of extra stops, is all.
You raise your eyebrow.
Extra stops? The princesses have referred me to people we should speak to while we are at our destination, is all. Come on, Anon, this is amazing news.
She said excitedly. You still had the feeling you weren't being told something, but that wasn't important. You and Mosina had just been given the opportunity of a lifetime, and you were going to take it. Mosina didn't stop talking about everything the two of you were going to do and see in Stalingrad and beyond on the way to the train terminal. As you walk onto the platform, you see Silvertongue waiting for you with your ticket and a bag of bids. Beside him was a rather gruff-looking griffin. He looks at you as the two of you approach Silvertongue.
I trust all of your things are packed and ready to go?
He said, eyeing Mosina's bags.
Yes, uncle. I checked and double-checked.
She smiled, rolling her eyes slightly. Silvertongue frowned a little.
Must be so careful, Mosina. I simply couldn't live with myself if anything happened to you.
He said. Mosina simply shook her head and hugged her uncle.
I'll be fine, uncle. Really, I have Anon to look out for me.
She giggled. Silvertongue returned the hug, but scoffed at the mention of you.
Yes, well, regardless, I have decided to invest in a little bit of insurance.
he said, breaking the embrace and motioning toward the griffin.
This is Hugo. He is an old friend from my days as an envoy to the Griffon Kingdoms. He will be accompanying you and Anon on your trip. Expenses paid, of course.
The griffin nodded at you, and Mosina without a word, as your gaze turned to him. Mosina was wide-eyed like a star-struck fangirl. You nudge her lightly, and she snaps out of her trance.
Uncle, I appreciate the concern, but this really isn't necessary. Anon and I can do this on our own.
Mosina said reassuringly.
I insist.
Silvertongue said, handing Mosina your tickets and bits, as well as your cash for the trip.
Now, you're free, need to catch your train. Please, please, be careful, Mosina.
He said, hugging her one more time. Mosina relented, realizing that the additional company was not optional, and returned the hug.
I will, Uncle. I will send you word when I can.
She said, breaking away.
Come on, Anon, let's get going. Right behind you.
You say. Following her, she trots off toward the train. Behind you, the heavier, padded steps of Hugo the Griffin were right on your tail. The air began to get noticeably chillier as your train sped further north with each passing moment. The rolling green fields and hills of central Equestria began to give way to barren steppes. A light snowfall also began in the passing moments. Mosina had been rapping off a list of all of the monuments and historical sites that she wanted to see, and about the culture of the northern ponies. With the amount of knowledge she already had, you almost wondered why she even needed to make the trip for her book. She had told you that the reason for the trip was that there was a big difference between book knowledge and actual experience. Not like you could argue with that. For the last 2 hours or so, she had been asleep, one of the few times that you had actually seen her do so in the last 2 days. Hugo had simply buried his face in a book for the entire trip thus far. In fact, you had yet to hear him say a single word. Maybe it was time to change that.
So, Hugo, what are reading there?
You ask.
A book.
The griffin responded flatly, not even looking up from the pages. Oh, this was going to be fun.
Yeah, I can see that. Anything good?
You ask, still trying to be friendly.
Depends on what you mean by good.
Hugo responded, still not looking at you.
An experiment is usually how I measure that, but I'm not much of a reader.
You admit, still trying to get a real response out of your new companion.
I'm not surprised.
He responded.
What's that supposed to mean?
You ask, feeling like that was a stab at you.
That means that I took you for a simpleton since I saw you back at the terminal.
He replied, What a dick. You weren't surprised. This was a friend of Silvertongue after all.
Well, excuse me for being stuck on a dock all day every day. Doesn't exactly leave much time for such luxuries.
You grumble.
I managed to read the complete works of Leo Skyfeather while entrenched during the War of the Three Kings.
Hugo yawned. Show off.
Do you have some sort of problem with me?
You ask, getting tired of this bird's attitude. Finally, Hugo sighs, closes his book, and looks at you.
My only problem is that I have a child pestering me while I'm trying to read.
He says, a tone of clear irritation in his voice.
I'm not a child.
You grumble.
To me, you are. You are lucky that Sivetan's niece had taken you so kindly to you, or I would not be giving you such patience.
He calls that shit show patience?
Yeah, well, whatever. I still don't think you should even be here. Mosina and I don't need you to babysit us. I am not here to look after you. I'm here to protect my old friend's kin. He and I could care less about what happens to you.
Hugo snarled. Figures. Silver probably thought that you'd end up robbing Mosina and abandoning her somewhere. Hugo was here to protect her against you.
And then let's just make this easy on both of us and not speak to each other during this trip. In fact, how about you just go back to burying your face in that book and keep in there for the rest of the trip?
You say,
Fine by me.
Hugo says, opening his book and resuming his reading. Beside you, you hear a yawn as Mosina stirs from her sleep. Rubbing her eyes, she tries to adjust to the lighting of the train.
Hi, Anon. Could you hand me my glasses?
She yawns, feeling around for them.
Sure, here you go.
You say, retrieving her glasses from your bag. You'd taken them off when she fell asleep. Couldn't risk them getting broken, not on the road with her near blindness. As she puts on the glasses, she blinks a few times before looking out the window. Darkness was falling. The horizon was a deep red, as the sun began falling behind it.
We should be there in about a couple of hours.
She yawned again, producing a map from her bags.
We'll need to find the red square when we get there. It is the inn where we'll be spending the duration of our time in Stalingrad. Sounds good to me.
You say bluntly. Mosina looks at you, and you can tell she senses something was on your mind.
Everything alright, Anon?
She asks, a concerned look on her face.
Ichi, I think I will take a nap. Do you mind waiting me when we get there?
You ask, laying down in your seat.
Sure thing. I have a few things I need to read over in the meantime anyway. Sleep tight.
She says cheerfully, before producing a book and immediately scanning the pages.
You never stop, do you?
You chuckle.
No.
She responds, smiling at you.
Now get to sleep. If you don't know, you might as well stay up the rest of the ride. Yes, ma'am.
You yawn, rolling your eyes. Even with that jackass bird over there, you could feel that this was going to be a good trip all the same. Within minutes, you doze off to sleep as you listen to Mosina muttering to this and that of herself, and your train pushing forward into the darkening sky and the snowfall getting heavier and heavier.